Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about a particular phase in the investments in the Caribbean and in Grenada, in this region. And we know that by and large there were a lot of failures. Trinidad less so because of the oil-based economy. Given that, where did we go from there? What happened next?
Well, basically, with the failure of the ideological approach, you know, what you have had happening in the last decade or so, and I think 15 years a decade, has been a shift towards private sector orientation, where virtually most of the Caribbean islands, if not all, have articulated that the new vision, the new policy approach has been a private sector led, you know, with government providing the supporting infrastructure. So you're providing the supporting infrastructure, hoping that private sector, given all that support, will on their own initiative pursue developmental projects that can contribute and drive economic growth. And that has been the philosophy that, or the dispensation that Caribbean governments have been pursuing in the last 15 years.
And in Grenada also.
And certainly in Grenada. We embrace it wholeheartedly.
So
and we still articulate that that's the
Claude
philosophy.
Claude was making a point a few minutes, before the break, alluding to the fact that we've had a number of projects that initiated by foreign investors in collaboration with the government, where we've had to, as it were, provide certain guarantees. You talk about the Mount Hartman, there are others, I believe.
We also talking about the project with the bricks. It went to the stage where people were sent to the States, you know, to undergo training, you know, in that regard. You know.
But why has this happened? I mean, is it a regime we had set up? Is it the policy guiding investments? I mean, what happened? Where did it go wrong for us?
Again, Mr. Moses alluded earlier on to the competitiveness, you know, of those host countries. We look at Asia, for example, and Asia provides very cheap labor now. Okay, so they're coming into the Caribbean with the hope that profits basically would increase as a result of the cheap labor. Only to find out there are cheaper labor elsewhere, okay, where they might be able to make maybe twice as much profit. So, and this is business. This is business. They take advantage, you know, of the incentives, okay, that actually lure them into the country. And the incentives that basically are very lucrative, you know. So
are we not? Is it our homework that is flawed here? Are we? Our review or research is inadequate? Why is this happening? I mean,
I think there is a lack of will, you know, to actually do proper investigation, you know, into the background of those investors and what have you. You know, people come and the parade, you know, telling government to go. These are the things that you can expect us to do, you know, laying all the benefits and what have you, you know, and up front they look very, very, very attractive, you know, and very convincing, but it's like a hope crashing down into despair. You know,
Moses, what about the other part of it? It's one thing, I mean, the financial aspect, where yes, governments are taking part of the risk and in a rush to, or in a need to have these developments given the job potential. What about what we call the environmental impact assessment, the social impact assessments, the EIA, so to speak? Are they adequate in your view? I recall the Mount Hartman situation with the National Dove, that there was a Four Seasons project, I believe. We went through so much trauma, so to speak. You had foreign-based international organizations getting involved. I mean, are we doing enough in this area, given climate change and other factors?
See, I'll come to that part of the question, but I want us to begin by going back to the question you asked Claude, where it starts. And I think it has to do with, you need to understand and articulate a sound policy before you can embrace that philosophy. And if you look at the reasons for quote-unquote failure, or if it can be defined as not really maximizing potential benefits. There are a number of reasons why that has not occurred, and it's not unique to Grenada. And we could better understand that if you look at the successes of the countries who have done it properly, and you would recognize that it calls for a comprehensive approach.
Which countries?
Well, Singapore is in Malaysia.
Any regional country, though?
Regional
Any regional
success.
country?
Ireland.
Regional.
It's difficult, no. One may argue maybe Barbados has succeeded a little better than some other Caribbean countries. But it has to do with some fundamental basics. The first is that you have to understand what is your competitive edge. What is it you're offering? What resource do you have? We all recognize that our primary resource in the Caribbean is people. What is the level of education, the skills capacity of the countries? And we need to appreciate that. A lot of countries have gone after attracting the type of jobs where basic functions are performed. And it's at that point where it's extremely competitive, where you cannot compete with cheaper labor in other parts of the world. So certainly you have to go up the value chain. You have to ensure that your educational level is at such that your people can perform certain skills and functions that the cheaper labor countries cannot do, and target your industries that you're trying to attract within your country. And if that is not done adequately, you will obviously lose your competitive edge. And in fact, if you study the success stories, for instance, when Ireland started, they were focusing on the production aspect of ICT. And they found, well, they were losing their competitive edge, so you had to transition up the value chain to services. So you're no longer focusing on producing computers and computer parts, etc. You're now focusing on the range of support services that is necessary to drive the industry. So you're talking about trained people who can solve problems, who can respond to the client's problems, and forgetting the basic production. So even success enjoyed at a period of time, disappears unless you progress along the value chain.
I'm listening to you, but I'm not hearing Grenada.
We're going to come into that.
Yeah, but I don't have the time to come to that. I want to come to this now.
Grenada,
tell me where we are.
That's where Grenada has failed, in the sense that most of the industries, most of the investors we attracted at a certain point in time obviously did not deliver. So what we need to do, we need to obviously do it much better. We need to have a better appreciation and understanding of our issues, our environment, and what is it we need to protect. What is our heritage? What is it we want a foreign investor to do for us? It's not just about inviting a foreign investor who tells us what we should do. We need to understand what it is we want, and we go after that. And I don't know that we have been doing that successfully. We need to understand our policies, and our policies are there for reasons, to protect our heritage and ensure, that Grenada can benefit from the foreign investors. I don't think we have done that adequately. I've seen instances where foreign investors have gotten permission to do things, and these things are possible conflict with our environment. You see it all over the place.
Example.
Well, I have raised the issue in Parliament on many occasions. What exactly is Grenada's tourism product? And I think Grenada's tourism product is a unique thing. It's the totality of what Grenada has to offer. It's our natural heritage, it's our unique beauty. And if we allow an investor to destroy an element of our beauty, that's a conflict. I was the first person to raise in Parliament the whole question of the lagoon. Nobody else was paying attention to it over 2 years ago.
What's your concern about the lagoon, Claude? Well, I'm glad you raised it, because clearly as we look at investment, this, on my way here, this is the biggest...
Well, I discovered purely accidental when I went on to Pool's Capital website. And at that time, the plan I saw that Pool Capital was going to build an 8-foot wall all along the Lagoon Road. Now, I'm hearing all sorts of different things, but what I saw was a wall along the Lagoon Road.
But this might be a proposal that Pool Capital developed. Is this a proposal that was approved by
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay,
but
fine.
I raised it in Parliament.
Yes.
And I placed it in the context of Grenada's tourism product. And I said, what makes us unique? And I made reference to the early 80s when I worked in the Ministry of Planning, and our tourism policy debt. We are warned by the experts, do not make the mistake like Barbados made, where the first time I heard the concept of windows to the sea. When you drove around Barbados, you could not see the sea anymore. It was all hotels, buildings, buildings. And we took the policy position then that we would not pursue that strategy of development. So I viewed a wall along the Lagoon Road at that time was definitely, conflicting with that policy.